The 1988 United States Senate election in Texas was held on November 8, 1988. Incumbent Democratic United States Senator Lloyd Bentsen won re-election to a fourth term, defeating Republican Representative Bo Bolter. Bentsen easily won the Democratic nomination for another term, while Bolter came through a runoff in the Republican primary, defeating Wes Gilbreth. After being nominated for the Senate, Bentsen was chosen by Michael Dukakis as his vice presidential running mate and therefore ran for both the Senate and the vice presidency at the same time. Bentsen was always the favorite for the Senate election and won with 59.2% of the vote, compared to 40% for Bolter. As of 2014, this was the last time a Democrat won a United States Senate election in Texas. Primaries. Democratic primary. In the Democratic primary, Democratic Senator Lloyd Bentsen defeated the same opponent he had beaten in 1982, Joe Sullivan, a psychology professor from San Antonio. Bentsen had been senator from Texas since first winning the election in 1970 and had been re-elected in 1976 and 1982. He was also chairman of the Senate Finance Committee and the clear favorite for re-election in 1988. Sullivan stood on a platform calling for reduced spending by the federal government, but had been easily defeated by Bentsen in the 1982 Democratic primary. This was repeated in 1988 with Bentsen winning the primary with over 80% of the vote. Republican primary. 4 candidates competed for the Republican nomination: U.S. Representative Bo Bolter, former state representative Milton Fox, millionaire Houston businessman Wes Gilbreth, and businessman Ned Snead. Bolter was a 2-term representative for the 13th District, while Gilbreth was competing in his first election, but spent $500,000 on the primary. Wes Gilbreth led in the March primary with 36.7%, but as no candidate won a majority, went into a runoff election against Bo Bolter, who came second with 30.5%. There was few policy differences between Bolter and Gilbreth, with both candidates being conservatives who opposed abortion and called for reduced government spending. Gilbreth spent about $1 million of his money in his contest for the primary, while Bolter spent about $250,000. However, Bolter won endorsements from many Texas Republican leaders, including the candidates who had come third and fourth in the March primary, as well as from anti-abortion groups. Bolter won the April runoff for the Republican nomination with just over 60% of the vote. Vice presidential candidate. In July 1988, the Democratic presidential nominee Michael Dukakis chose Lloyd Bentsen to be the Democratic vice presidential candidate. As the Texas Democrats had already had their primary for Senate candidate, Bentsen could not be replaced on the ballot. Bentsen was, however, able to run both for the Senate and for vice president, as Lyndon Johnson had gotten Texas law changed in 1960 to allow Johnson to do the same at the 1960 election. However, Bo Bolter attacked Bentsen for running for both the Senate and vice presidency, calling it arrogant, unethical, and possibly illegal. Bolter and the National Republican Senatorial Committee filed a complaint with the Federal Election Commission, FEC, claiming that the dual candidacy violated federal campaign finance laws, as any spending in one race would unfairly affect the other campaign. However, the FEC rejected the complaint, and this decision was confirmed by the United States Courts of Appeals. Bolter continued to attack Bentsen over the dual candidacy, running a campaign advert in August 1988 mocking Bentsen for trying to ride 2 horses at the same time. Campaign. Lloyd Bentsen was always the favorite for the election, with a large cash advantage over Bo Bolter. Filings with the FEC at the beginning of August showed Bentsen had $3.9 million compared to only $14,000 for Bolter. The financial advantage for Bentsen continued through the campaign, and by the beginning of November, Bentsen had raised $7.5 million for the Senate election, while Bolter had raised $2.7 million. Bolter's campaign received little or no official Republican support, with the Republican presidential campaign giving a not very subtle endorsement of a Texas ticket, which was George Bush for president and Bentsen for the Senate. However, Bolter hoped to benefit from Bush's coattails and ran campaign adverts pointing to his links with Bush and Ronald Reagan. Bolter also ran adverts attacking Bentsen for supporting giving benefit to illegal immigrants, but this was denied by the Bentsen campaign. Meanwhile, Bentsen ran adverts showing things they said he had done for Texas, such as passing a trade bill, catastrophic coverage legislation, repealing the windfall profit tax, and preserving local bus services. At the beginning of October 1988, Democrat polls were reported to show Bentsen at least 20 ahead of Bolter, with Bentsen spending much of his time campaigning for the presidential election and very little time on the Senate election. Election results. Lloyd Bentsen won the Senate election by a clear margin over Bo Bolter, at the same time as he and Michael Dukakis lost the presidential race, with George Bush winning Texas with 56% of the vote compared to 43% for Dukakis. Bentsen's vote total in the Senate election was reported to be at the time the highest vote total in any Texas statewide election.